I'm Kent, and this is another Weekend Adventure Rides how-to. Today we are going to go through, well actually this is going to be the first of a two-part series. We're going to go through and clean up a cylinder head. Now this cylinder head was acquired from basically a chicken yard, and it had a lot of dirt and grime and just gross things all over it. So you'll be able to see that in this episode and how we take that from the barnyard find to a brand new looking cylinder head. And so with this episode we're going to be cleaning it up, and then next week we're going to do another episode on rebuilding this cylinder head. So don't go anywhere, we're going to get started on this right now. All right, so this is the cylinder head off the 250. Now this needs a lot of TLC. It's clearly been left outside, and it looks a little rusted in the valves. So we're going to pull these valves out. We're going to assess those assemblies. I did get some new valves, so we'll be putting new valves in here. I need to check these springs and see if we may need to replace those springs, but we're going to soak all those in some acetone and see if we can clean them up. And as long as they're within spec, we'll reuse those. And then we'll clean all of the mating surfaces, and then these, the top of the cylinder here, and make sure everything is looking nice and ready to go back together on the top of the motor. So the first thing we're gonna do is pull these valves out, and I have the Tusk valve spring removal tool or compression tool. So we'll get that set up here. Most of these compression tools are very similar. They'll kind of do the same thing. So you're gonna have basically two sides like this. We'll use these ones. So this threads in. All right, we'll snap that one on. Okay, now we'll lay our cylinder on its side like this. Now you want to line up the bottom with the valve that you're going to be removing. So the top of the valve there, and then we're going to crank down the top here. I'll show you, I'll get a better view of this. That fits perfectly on there. Okay, and so our top side looks like this. And we've got that valve beginning to be compressed there. So this kit comes with a T-handle. So you just mate that up there, and we're gonna start twisting this down. There, it popped. And then I can see the keepers in there, so we'll just keep twisting this down until those are within reach. Okay. So we'll use pair of long needle nose pliers here, and we're just going to reach in and grab those keepers there. Now it's important that you don't lose these. These are really hard to find and can be expensive. So that's really all that's holding the valve in, are just these two little valve keepers here. And of course they're going to be hard to see in the video, just tiny little pieces. Anyway, those will go right into a Ziploc bag so they don't get lost on the floor. Okay, now we're just going to loosen up our valve compressor, and that'll allow the spring to fully expand. There's actually two springs in here. There's an inner and an outer spring. So we've got that off there. And then you'll have the top of the valve there, and then two springs. And these are very dirty, but they appear to be in working order. What we're gonna do is get those cleaned up with some acetone, and they should be ready to go back on, no problem. So we'll put all the pieces to that valve in one bag. And now this valve itself can come out, and there is one exhaust valve there. It's actually probably in working order. I just had some aftermarket valves that I wanted to put in, so we're going to replace those. So we'll put all those together, and then at the top of your valve guide here is the valve seal, which keeps oil from going down into the cylinder, so we're going to pop that off, and those will get replaced. There we go. So that's trash, that'll go in the garbage. Actually doesn't look too bad, those valve seats. So we'll get that cleaned up, and we will continue on removing these. To me that it might actually be bent. We'll test that. Anyway, there's a way you can set up so you have basically two boards like this, and you put this in the middle and you roll it, and you see if there's any imperfections in it. Roll it kind of like how you test a pool cue on a table at a divey bar. The same thing with this. Yeah. To me, it looks like this one's actually bent. So it's good, we're gonna replace these. And then we'll do the actual measurements and test that before I resell them, because I don't wanna hand those off to somebody else if they're bent and not usable. Okay. So we've got all 4 of our valves out. Oh, looks like we have the valve seal still on there, so we'll pull that valve seal. Now we're going to get everything into an acetone bath so that we can start scrubbing it up and cleaning it. The fins on here are really gross, the exhaust ports, everything looks pretty well used and nasty, so we're going to get all this cleaned up, looking nice, ready to go back together on the motor. All right, so I'm going to show you how to take exhaust studs off. So these are studs. They don't have a head on them, so they're just a full threaded piece, or at least they're threaded on both sides, and in the middle there's no thread, so you can only thread them in so far. Anyway, you can't just turn them off with a ratchet. So what we're going to do is the double nut method. So we'll put one nut here upside down, and we'll take that all the way down until we can get the other one on and tighten those together, and then we'll twist them off, and hopefully it breaks free. So let's see if this works. So we're going to twist this one on until we can get the second one on there. And this is a lock nut, so I was hoping these would kind of fit together a little more easily and more strongly. All right, there we go. So we'll lock those together here. All right, so those 2 nuts are locked together. Now we're going to try to twist them off together. And it worked. So that first one's coming out no problem there. There we go. So just like that. Now the challenge will be getting those apart. So turns out this cylinder head fits perfectly in an 8x8 baking pan, just like that. So we'll use that, and I'll get our acetone over here. We'll get this soaking for an hour or so, and then we'll get it cleaned up. All right, so I don't actually need very much. get everything covered like that. And like I said, we'll give that about an hour to sit. And after an hour, we'll come back, try to start getting this thing cleaned up. There's a lot of RTV and all these little threaded bits here. So hopefully those are still in good shape. I'll probably run a tap down everything just to clean it up and make sure that those are all in working order. Okay, so this head's been sitting for about an hour. Now we're gonna take a brass brush and we're gonna go ahead and scrub this. Okay, now that that's pretty well cleaned up there, we'll go ahead and put all of our valve springs into this and get them all cleaned up and looking nice here. Get all that old grime and rust off there. It appears these are actually cleaning up okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and keep these old springs and continue cleaning them up, and we'll put them back in with the new valves. So in the manual, it should tell you the correct height of the spring and where to measure it. So just use some calipers and we'll measure these springs and make sure they're within the standard. And that way we can make sure we can reuse them. But I'm assuming that they are based on just looking at them right here. So we were mixing 3 gallons of warm tap water with about 16 ounces of this Pour 15 cleaner degreaser. So we've got all that in our makeshift parts cleaner here. I've got 3 brushes that I like to use, this big long bristle kind of stiff brush, and then I've got a dish brush, the smaller head here, and then also like this larger brass wire brush. All right, we'll get after it here. Cleaned cylinder head here, and gosh, that looks so much better than it did before. Now, we didn't go through and clean out all of the bolt holes yet, and we're going to do that now. So I've got this pipe cleaner here, and then also a tap that we fit into this T-handle. And I'll show you how to do that after we get everything cleaned out with the pipe cleaner first. We're gonna go through and use our tap and clean these threads out. When you're doing this, it's really important that you get the correct bolt size, but also the correct thread count. Check your manufacturer and make sure that you figure out what thread count you need. When we're starting this, we'll start right here with the one closest to me. Make sure that you have your tap perfectly perpendicular with the surface of this, going squarely into the hole. And you can just lightly start threading it in. So we're simply going through and cleaning them out, repairing if there's any abnormalities there within the threads. So you don't really need to push this very hard. So we're just gonna keep this going, threading down. And we're gonna go to the point where this stops. So we've got that threaded all the way through, and you can see the grooves where it's cleaning out. So run that back and forth a few times, And then we'll bring that out. Now you can see there's just a bunch of junk in there. So we're gonna clean this off really quick. Just use that, that'll work fine. All right, that one looks clean. So that's the first one we're gonna go through. We're gonna hit all these 6mm ones, and then we're gonna go back through and get the 8mm ones following that. All right, that's all we can show you this week. But don't forget, like, subscribe, follow us along, because we're gonna continue this lightweight adventure bike build. So we'll see you next week as we put this cylinder head back together.